Good morning, Met fans. Happy Friday. Who is watching the playoffs? Hasn't it been crazy? Who are you rooting for? Did you think the Dodgers were dead? They're not dead. Did you think the Astros were dead? They're not dead. We still got baseball in both leagues. But as always, our main focus is always on our Metropolitans. And next year, we want to be the team that everyone's talking about this time of year. And I think our next guest will agree with on that and with me on that. And he is one of, and if you Facebook member groups of the New York Mets baseball life know this guy. He's on there just about every day, and he is fantastic. He hits home runs every day. One of the most knowledgeable, and he opinionated in a good way. And he's going to give us some of his opinions today. And it's my pleasure. It's a long time coming. I'm glad to have him here. It's David J. Rubin. David, welcome aboard. And how are things in California?
Pretty great, Stan. Thank you for that awesome introduction. I wish I deserved it, but thanks, my friend.
No, you do. You do. You amaze me. When you got McKay Christensen as our Jeopardy answer the other day, I said, either this guy is into the Mets 24/7 or he just has like a photographic memory. But that amazed me, the fact that you got that one.
I think a little of both.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah, my dad said as a kid, if you studied as hard in school as you did of the Mets, you would rule the world. I said, I'd rather rule the world of the Mets.
Yeah, you'd be the Ken Jennings of the Mets. That's what you would
be. Exactly.
Yeah. But
yeah.
The reason why we have David on today is he has a lot on his mind. Definitely. And he's going to give a sneak peek of what he is going to be featuring on his next blog, which will be found on Max Mets. Those of you who've been following the Mets on blog sites throughout the years have seen him on various sites. And his last couple of pieces of work have been on Max Mets. And I think the next piece is going to be coming up next week sometime, David?
Yeah, next week or the week after, kind of doing a review of the past year, Steve Cohn's first year as owner. And, it's interesting. I have a different perspective than some people, Stan, because living in the West Coast for the last 28 years, I always consider myself a New Yorker who wakes up in California. And I love it out here, but I'm always a New Yorker, a crazy Met fan, crazy New York sport team fan. And I've learned a lot living outside of New York about kind of the perspective of how New York is viewed, why some of the things happen in New York that we take for granted when we're there, particularly in how the media portrays us. And I'm sure you can relate to this. When we're in New York and we're a Mets fan, we think the Mets are the center of the world. We think New York is the center of the world. And there's a reason for it, right? You can do anything you want at any hour of the day in New York, unlike probably anywhere outside of maybe London or Tokyo. It's an incredible place to be. And it takes a lot to be a New Yorker. You're hit on all sides 24/7. And it takes a tough skin and a strong person. And if you think about it, imagine you're a baseball player. You're 24 years of age. You came from somewhere in middle America. And you're playing in front of 55,000 people a night. And you are being cheered or booed, or whatever it might be. And after the game, you're still a 24-year-old guy. Imagine what you were like at 24, how immature you were, right?
Right.
And then at the end of the game, you've got five vultures to your eye. They're not really vultures. They have a job to do. But they're coming at you to pick apart your bones and say, why did you swing at that pitch? Why did you drop that ball? And, it could be a little bit alarming. It could be, you feel like a deer in the headlights. You're not used to that. You didn't grow up that way. And yeah, when you're a baseball player, yes, you're crazy. You make crazy money. There are crazy expectations of us fans. We want everybody to hit a home run every at bat. We want to strike out if you're a pitcher. And we know that's not realistic, but that's our expectation. And a baseball player hitting 300 is only right 3 out of 10 times a shot, right? In my fields, I worked in the restaurants for 35 years. If I was only good 3 out of 10 times, every restaurant I ever owned or ran would be out of business. Right. So now you have people who are being attacked at all sides. And you say to yourself, at 6 years in the game, you're now a free agent. Why do you want to stay there? And we as New Yorkers, as fans, think, well, of course you want to be in New York. Of course you want to be. It's the best place. And it is, right? When things are going well, there's no better place in the world to be than New York. But when things are tough, it's a tough place to be. And you have very expensive real estate. There are taxes up the wazoo, especially real estate taxes, right? there it's a can be a tough place to live. It's great. You get all the benefits, but with any benefit, you pay the price.
Right.
So there are some people, we say, we want this free agent, we want that free agent. Why aren't they coming? Not everybody wants to be there. That's the reality. There are other places to play, like St. Louis, right? They have plenty of money to pay. Boston, it's a tougher town, but yet people go there. A lot of it is because they weren't the butt of jokes the way our team has been for so long. And what I was getting at earlier about seeing things differently, there's a lot of jealousy towards New York. It's everywhere. There's a lot of jealousy because New York is always talked about. Like if you watch any of the shows on the MLB Network, they're always talking about the Mets and the Yankees. Why? Well, they're in New York, first of all, right? The network's there. And what sells? New York. Let's be real.
Right.
Right. So there's a whole thing going on right now where everyone's slamming the Mets, everyone's slamming Sandy, everyone's slamming Steve Cohn. There's this bias, right? Inherent media bias against New York, and particularly against the Mets. Brian Cashman's been a media darling for whatever reason for the last 15 years. He spends billions and billions of dollars. They don't win a World Series, but they're the Yankees. They get away with it. The Mets had the Wilpons in power, hated people. They were not there. I unfortunately, I know of them on a personal level, so I can say they were not a good ownership group, not just as a fan, but to people who worked in the organization. They were not great people to work for and with. But putting that aside, Sandy Alderson has been a stalwart in the game for a long time. Ex-Marine, great guy, right? But then what you don't see is Sandy worked in the commissioner's office. Sandy had a lot of people in the game who don't like him or didn't like him. Sandy speaks his mind. That, again, not everybody likes that, right? New Yorkers, we speak our mind. And even in Southern California, I'm direct. I'll tell you whether I like you or not, right to your face. A lot of people who want to stab you in the back would never tell you to your face what they think. That exists in baseball also. And Sandy's brash. Sandy's in your face. He has, he's going to come at you, and he's got a sarcasm that not everybody appreciates. I love it, but not everybody appreciates that, right?
Yeah.
So he was brought in by Steve Cohn for a reason. It wasn't because Steve Cohn thought he was the greatest builder of dynasties or anything like that. It's because Sandy was A, respected in the game, and B, had come from an environment where he, like Moneyball said, he tried to push for undiscovered advantages in the game. And so if a Dave Dombrowski, who's a known spendthrift, was brought in as Cohn's president, he might not have won the approval to be the owner, because Dombrowski is known as a guy who's just going to spend. Look what he did with the Red Sox, right? He bought them to a World Series, and he
Then he runs
compromised their
away.
future.
Yeah.
Right. So he had to bring in somebody like Sandy in order to get the approval. It was not a slam dunk that he was going to get approved. People really didn't want A-Rod and J-Lo, and as we've seen, that was, God, can you imagine dealing with
We'd be in tatters right now.
Yeah, the separation pieces. It would be another McCourt situation, right?
Yeah.
So they had to bring in someone like Sandy, and really there was no one else like Sandy who was available. And the only advantage Sandy had was he did put together a good portion of the team and the organization that's there. There were a lot of people who were loyal to him. Not as important. What is probably more important is the fact that there were a lot of players that he knew and could relate to, and he understood the minor league system a little bit better than Brody. And Brody brought some great people in. Jerry Banner was an incredible development guy. He brought in Allard Baird. There was a great group of people. But one of the things that Brody had to do is he had to act really quickly, right? And Brody came in and traded our best minor leaguer. He was trying to make a mark. Doesn't get the credit of grabbing guys like Matt Allen and Josh Wolf and Beatty. Doesn't get the credit he deserves for some of the moves he did. I know he wasn't anyone's idea of who our general manager should be, but he did some great things. He got Jacob deGrom to stay, signed him to a deal. He did a bunch of good things behind the scenes, and he had to deal with Jeff Wilpon and the Wilpon ownership group, and that was really hard. Okay, so bring it back around to where we are now. Brody is looked at as an outcast. Oh my God, Brody! But Brody did some good things. Sandy did some good things, but like same situation with Brody, Sandy came into this late. Brody came into it late. Brody walked into a landmine where Jeff Wilpon wanted him to take the core that was there and build them quickly into a World Series team. So what did he do? He grabbed a Robinson Cano, a Diaz. He tried to bring the team to the next level quickly. And as you know, all too well, following this team forever, following baseball forever, you try to get a quick fix, you got less than a 50-50 chance it's going to work.
I always say it's about 33% chance when you go after the big money all the time.
Yeah.
You're paying
At
for
best.
past performance, not future performance.
Right. As the Yankees of the Steve Kemp years will tell you, and as the Mets of the Vince Coleman and Bobby Bonilla years will tell you, right?
Right.
So Brody came into it at the last minute. He had to do a whole rebuild quickly, and he did some good things. Sandy came into it really at the last minute because Cone wasn't approved until so late in the offseason that by the time the trade deadline came around, they wanted to make a splash. They grabbed a shortstop, maybe the one position in the entire field we didn't need a reinforcement of with Jimenez.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up because that puzzled me with Mauricio. And look at the year Rosario's had. He just needed the experience and discipline. So it did baffle me, the Lindor trade. But again, I kind of look at it as they had to make a splash to show the fans, sort of like when they signed David Wright to a long-term contract. Sort of like when they had to sign Cespedes off of what he did. To let him go, it's going to look bad public relations-wise. At the time, I wasn't sure it was a great signing, but those are the guys that were bringing you to the next step to get there. So they had to sign him. But I think the Lindor thing was almost in the same vein as those two deals.
Yes.
Where they had to do something to prove that the Mets are going to be a big player in the market. They didn't need the shortstop. I agree with you 100%. But that, I guess, in their eyes, that was the best deal out there for them to sign Lindor after all the other free agents settled at that time. So.
Right, but let's look at that for a minute. I'm glad you brought up Cespedes because here's an interesting thing. They re-signed Cespedes to his big contract, right? Cespedes was one of the heroes of that playoff run, 2015, which, by the way, was my favorite year of being a Met fan in my whole life. And I'll talk about that in a sec. But who did we not sign in 2015? We signed Cespedes. Who did we let get away? Who was also a hero of the playoffs?
Hero Daniel Murphy.
Right. So Sandy, again, made a judgment call. He didn't want to play Murphy because he didn't think he had a position for him. As we all know, Murphy went on to kill us with the Nationals. 3 unbelievable seasons.
One was almost MVP-like.
Right. Well, it really was MVP-like, right? Yeah. But if he played a position better, maybe the pundits would have given him, the MVP award, possibly. Hard to say. But he was amazing. And Sandy does this a lot. He brings in this name, and then he ignores someone else. So he brought in a shortstop, and he totally mishandled the Real Muto situation.
Yeah.
It was a game. He was almost playing a game of chicken. Well, McCann wasn't going to be signed by anyone else to that larger contract. The reality, right? He could have actually had Real Muto and McCann if he played his cards right. He should have made a bigger deal. Real Muto in this lineup. Real Muto with a Rosario and a Jimenez at shortstop certainly would have been a better team than with McCann and Lindor at shortstop. Now, not knocking, I love Lindor as a player. I love his spunk. I think he's an amazing fielder. He's a great all-around ball player. The pressure, again, like I spoke about at the start of the show, the pressure on someone coming into the New York market is huge. He played in Cleveland, big city, gorgeous city, but it may as well be, under a rock compared to the pressure of playing in New York. So they brought him in a tough situation, last minute, signed him to this crazy deal that nobody, I still am shocked by it. And it's a year later,
The first year hasn't kicked in yet.
No, exactly.
Yeah.
So we have 10 more years at $34.5 million. And then, when Jacob deGrom went to these guys this year and wanted somewhere close to $50 million a year for like 5 years or 4 years, they balked. Well, why would he want any less than that? Look what he's actually done compared to, what Lindor has done, right?
Especially what they were offering Bauer. That was an insult to deGrom at that point, too.
Right. Yeah, and again, you look at Bauer, you look at Callaway, you look at Porter, you look at what's his name, a current GM who's on suspension. Why am I forgetting his name?
Zach Scott.
Zach Scott, who I like a lot. We'll get to in a sec. Sandy's made some really bad choices. I thought he made some questionable choices. He brought in Paul DePodesta, who I really like. He's a real good baseball man. He left to go to the Browns. I get it. It's something he wanted to do. I didn't like the rest of the lieutenants that he had around him in his last iteration as leader of the Mets. I thought he was lacking in a lot of departments, and he likes his own cronies. So the expectation that he was going to go to Billy Beane, and Billy Beane was going to come in, and Beane was never coming in. There was never an opportunity to bring in Billy Beane, right? So let's again go back to the media. Beane wasn't coming in. He's a part owner in the A's, small piece, but a part owner. He has a large investment in a company that owns 2 soccer clubs and was trying to buy the Boston Red Sox. He lost his first marriage because he was more focused on the game than he was on his then daughter and wife. He has a new wife with twin daughters in high school in the Bay Area. He wasn't going to be leaving. It was
Make the
never going to
mistake
happen
again.
Yeah,
right. And that's what he came out and said. Right.
Right. And I just internally, I had this discussion with the guys at Max Mets almost 2 months ago. He was never really going to think about changing. David Stearns was never going to be let go. If you think about Mark Anastasio, he's been one of the biggest advocates for the small market teams, rightly so, right? He spent a lot of money in Milwaukee, built a beautiful stadium, put money into a team. Why would he want to let his guy? Yeah, Stearns is from New York. He might want to come back, but why would he let a guy go with another year in his contract and possibly an option when this guy has built a team that for the first time in history has gone to the playoffs 4 years in a row, right? Not going to let a guy like that go. And then Theo said, look, he's been doing this for a lot of years. He was burned out. He needed to go in the commissioner's office just to get a handle on things. And he was only going to come back for an exceptional opportunity. New York, to you and me, Stan, is an exceptional opportunity. Maybe not to somebody who wants a large piece of the action and can really make things happen on his own. And you have a situation where the team was just bought for over $2 billion. Why would Steve Cohen, honestly, he's a businessman, right? Why would you give 5 or 10% of a team away to an executive when there's no guarantee that you're going to win anything?
Especially when that team is worth about $3 billion.
Right, exactly. And then you think about it, like Bill Maher bought 10% of the team or 5% of the team for $20 million. And he was bought out for over $100 million. Amazing investment.
I didn't know he was bought out already.
Yeah, he was bought out in the process when Steve Cohen took over.
Okay.
And he said, and he was, for a while, he was really upset. He loves the Mets, but for a while he was upset because he kept getting cash calls. He would have to put in $2 million, $3 million, $5 million. So he probably added, besides his initial $20 million investment, rumors are that he added anywhere from $8 to another $20 million in cash calls back to help prop up the Wilpons, right? But he sold it for over $100 million, so he did really well, right? A great investment. But why would you then give 5% or over $100 million worth of an organization to a guy coming in as your president, right? Maybe if it's something, hey, win X amount of World Series over a period of years, we'll give it to you. Epstein's not going to take something on what might be, and Cohen's not going to give away a piece of his. He didn't get to be a billionaire giving things away like that. So it was a silly thing all around, and Sandy and Cohen were getting beaten up by the press. Oh, they have no plan. Yeah, they do. Steve Cohen didn't become a billionaire overnight. He didn't become a billionaire without figuring out every angle. He and Sandy and other people that he knows have talked about every single executive in the game. Yeah, they wanted to shoot high. They wanted to get a big name, not because they wanted the big name. It didn't matter what the fans thought about the president, right? What the fans care about ultimately is who we're going to bring on the field every day, who's going to play, in Citi Field. You don't win the offseason by bringing in a big name president. You win the offseason by bringing in the right baseball people to make the right decisions so that not just this year or next year, but for the next 10, 15 years, God willing, we're going to have a great product on the field. Stan, you and I are not young guys. We're not old, but we're not young guys. 2015 was the last year that we could be really excited about this team from start to finish, right?
It's hard to believe like time flies, but it does seem like yesterday to me. Then I put it in perspective. Like I experienced the 73 team,
Hmm.
and in 79, I was 17 and 79 going to all these Met games in the summertime. And to me, that 73 team seems so distant. So the older you
Hmm.
get, it seems like the time shrinks. But
Yes.
that, in reality, that was a long time ago. It's been
Yeah.
6 years already, and we really have not been contenders.
No.
And I think it's since 2010, we've only had a handful, a couple of teams that were over 500, and that was in that 215, 16, 17 stretch.
Right.
Otherwise, we've been horrible. We've been,
Right.
you can't sugarcoat this. We've been
No.
horrible. And the
And
fact
we
of the
built the
matter is,
core. Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
yeah, I always go every year. Sandy Alderson addressed the season ticket holders.
Hmm.
He has an impromptu thing like in February before they head down to Florida and everything. And his big thing was in 2015, we will win 90 games. We will win 90 games. So he wasn't predicting a pennant. He wasn't
Right.
predicting a wild card. He was predicting 90 wins. So then at the end of every season, but they haven't done it the last few years. They always had like what they call like a fan barbecue. Now they break it into smaller installments with fans and everything.
Right.
And he gave his speech, stated a Met address to season ticket holders. I think we're at 89 going into the last game of the year, which that was. And he goes, I told you, 90, we reached our goal. So he did what he thought he had to do,
Right.
but he didn't have much to work with. Let's be
Right.
honest. The trades they made, the Cespedes, the other trades during the deadline, Goodire wasn't a long-term purchase when they got him either. They did what they had to do to win, but it wasn't really building for the long term. The
Right.
pitching staff, yes, because those were prospects, but the everyday players, they were just getting by to do whatever they had to do. And Sandy's philosophy has always been to be never have a below average player at any position. That was
Right.
always his goal. You don't want to have a weakness in any position. You don't necessarily have to have all stars at every position. You have to have
Right.
a player who's at least league average. And I think that was his goal that year, and he accomplished it. Now, this year, I thought they'd be at least wild card contenders.
Yes.
There were so many injuries, and to me, honestly, I think when Jacob deGrom went down, that was the end. He was
Yes.
an MVP at that point, and his WAR was like 5. Not that WAR means anything, but it shows you how much
Right.
a pitcher meant to that ball club. And when he went down, the spirit of the ball club went down too, because now your
Yes.
number 2 and 3 starters now had to become the aces, and they were in a comfortable role before then. And I know Taijuan Walker was probably tired, fatigued, and all that, but once you became an all-star, people expect you to be an all-star, and that's where
Right.
DeGrom was the leader of that pitching staff. He could have helped us further
Right.
down the line. Now, I just hope he gets back healthy next year. We don't know,
Oh, please
but
God.
yeah,
Yeah. And you brought up a great point, right? Um, if everyone talks about analytics, and they're important. Analytics are important. There's a lot of things we can learn from them, but it's not the be all end all. And you can't measure heart and guts with analytics. People have tried to
right.
rule out money players. I'm sorry. I've been around the game too long. I've watched too many games, spoken to too many people. Yeah, hearts and guts are too important. And a guy like Jacob deGrom, when he takes the mound every fifth day, there is a feeling in the team that, hey, at least we're going to be in this game no matter what. The bullpen relaxes a little bit,
Yeah,
right? The hitters, they a lot of reasons. One of the big reasons, I should say, why we don't always win in deGrom games is because the hitters get so stressed. They want to perform so much for him that it's almost like they're stressing themselves to the point where they can't perform because they think Jacob deGrom deserves 10 runs, 15 runs every time out. They love him as a player. They love him as a friend. They respect what he does on that mound. And, it's not just what he does that day. It's a halo effect. So if deGrom's the first pitcher in the series, that means games 2 and 3, you're following deGrom as a Met pitcher. You're psyched, you're stoked to take the mound, and imagine if you're the opposing team. deGrom comes in, and you're like, "Oh my God, look what he did to us!" And now you have to take the mound. It's like, we got to go against the team that destroyed us yesterday with deGrom, and you got fresh bullpen arms, and you've got this feeling of invincibility. Like, football players, when they start feeling good and they like a running back hits the line and breaks through, you think you're going to do it every time. When a pitcher starts getting hit off of, you get a single and the double, all of a sudden you think, hey, we got this guy. We got him now. We were on the ropes. And that momentum feeds itself, right? Jacob deGrom shuts them down. He diminishes their mental abilities. He takes them down a peg. And now you're taking the hill the next day. Or if he's in the middle of the series, you face whomever. Let's say the other team wins the first game. Now you're facing deGrom. Oh, God. We know we're not going to win 3 now. So, their mentality comes down. You've got this incredible guy. He's a generational performer. He's not Tom Seaver. Okay, I love deGrom. Let's be real. He's not Tom Seaver. Nobody is. Nobody pitching now can be compared to him. deGrom is the best in the game. He and Max Scherzer, and I'll argue against anyone on that. But he is the best of what a current modern 2021 pitcher is, period. And when he takes that mound, everybody gets energized. Everybody does amazing things for him and around him. And you take that catalyst out, you can't replace it. The Braves did a great job. When Acuna went down, the Braves did a great job at filling out the outfield and getting other bats in there, right? You can fill in other bats in an order a lot easier than you can put an ace on the mound. And I'm not saying losing an Acuna is a good thing. It's horrible. One of the 4 best young players in the game with Guerrero, Tatis, and Soto. There's no doubt. But you take one bat out of an order, you can have other hitters kind of bring up some of the slack, and they brought in some good outfielders. And Rosario certainly proved that fact for Anthopoulos. Great move. You can't replace Jacob deGrom. First of all, you can't get a pitcher that can do what he can do. Second, you can, if a guy's a 40 home run, 120 RBI guy, you can get a 35, 90 guy. He's not going to give you exactly, but at least it's something. You're not going to be able to replace Jacob deGrom.
Yeah, and I agree. I agree with you with the Scherzer analogy. You could see the term. They don't have to be demonstrative. You could just tell they want it so bad on the mound all the time, and you just feel confident with them on the mound. And there are very few pitchers like that in baseball today. But that analogy to Scherzer nailed it, because that's how I always compared deGrom. I said he is our Max Scherzer, because Max Scherzer was a little bit better before deGrom really dominated, but he just gets the ball and he just does whatever he wants with the ball all the time. Right. And it'd be interesting to see what he does tomorrow in Game 6. But I'm jumping ahead to our discussion here. But I agree with you. deGrom was the missing piece this year, and when he went, that was the beginning of the end.
I'm a huge collector, as you can see from the stuff behind me, and I've got a large deGrom collection. And what I have to tell you, living in Southern California, I'm a big Mike Trout fan. I've been an Angel fan since '71 when Nolan Ryan was traded. And so I have the pleasure of watching Trout in person all the time. I go to anywhere from 10 to 20 Angel games a year, not this year with COVID. But I've seen him since he started out here. And I watch every Met game on my big screen. And my biggest enjoyment, besides my family, my grandkids, is watching Jacob deGrom pitch and Mike Trout hit. And I didn't have Trout almost all year. Certainly did not have deGrom almost all year. And you know what? It's funny. I have a ball that was that deGrom pitched to Tatis on the 11th of June against the Padres at Citi Field, a 99.5 mile an hour fastball that Tatis fouled off, and then Jake struck him out. So I have that ball, and I found myself watching that. That's the game. If you remember, he came out after 6 innings. That was the first sign, right?
I was actually at that game.
Okay. So I'll have to talk. I need a ticket stub for that game. We'll have to talk after.
Well, here's the thing: season ticket holders don't get tickets.
I know you get the printout.
We get we get like a generic ticket before the beginning of the year. It's like this little placard type thing. Everything else is digital now, and
so
I used to actually, because at the time before COVID, you could actually either use your actual ticket or use the digital way to get in. So I would always use the digital and just save the book, because the book was like a great souvenir to have.
Beautiful.
But I had like 9 different players throughout the season on there, or memorable events another year. And it kind of disappointed me. And I don't mean to digress and go off on a tangent here, but the same thing with the media guides. The media guides are gone. Mm-hmm. I've been collecting these media guides for years. Now it's only in digital format.
2 years in a row, I was the first one to put that on the internet.
Do it,
It's ridiculous. I can't show you right now, but I have a case that has every yearbook and every media guide in it, and
Yeah.
it hurts. I actually I sent the digital media guide over to FedEx Kinkos to see how much it would cost to print it out and then have it spiral bound away, and
Right.
it was going to be close to $200.
Really?
Double-sided color
Yeah.
pages cut, but I said forget it, it's not worth it. So I kept the
Yeah.
digital ones. It's sad, but yeah, as a collector of everything Mets, not having that media guide hurts. But I do think it's great that everybody can have it
Yeah. Oh,
electronically, and it's
easy
pretty cool.
access. Right.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. That's not something the Mets are known for, right? Giving things out for free. It's not.
Yeah. Well, last year
Not radio Met.
I had one program, and
Right.
that
Oh
was
yeah.
digital. You couldn't
Yes.
get the physical program last
Right.
year. And this year they cut it back to just two programs
Two.
because
Right.
beginning of the year I knew they weren't going to sell out. She had maybe 8,000 capacity at a while,
Right.
but I thought the second half they'd amp it up a bit. But they only had one other a half season one, and they
Yep.
didn't even come back with the second one until like after the maybe the end of July.
July. Yep. It was
Yeah,
Lindor to start off with. I have that one. And then DeGrom, I have that one too. Yeah. They're beautiful
yeah,
programs, but still, two in a whole year is, yeah, it's crazy. Yeah.
yeah. You would think I don't see how it's a loss leader for them. I mean, even if people have it keeps the Met name alive, you know. So, but what are you going to do?
Yeah. It's also like, things like beer bottles, like Budweiser bottles with Met logo on them, all the cups that have Coca-Cola or whatever sponsor on them, but we collect the cup. Yes, like if you're a restaurant and you don't put your name on the drinking cups, you're crazy. If you just let it say Coca-Cola, you're
Right.
crazy because what do people do? They walk around with that cup and it's literally your billboard walking around wherever they go. That's why Starbucks got so popular so quick. Those cups were like a big status symbol,
Right.
right? So people were going to work. They were bringing their Starbucks cup and filling it up with whatever coffee they had just to make it look like they had a Starbucks cup, right?
They probably had a glass of water in there.
Possibly, right?
Yeah.
So that status piece, you're right. It's important. It is a loss leader, but if you put the name out there, it's important. These are things, by the way, that Steve Cohen does understand, that the organization does understand, and to bring it back around for the next year, there are a couple of guys in Tampa that they're talking to, one or two in the Red Sox organization, a couple in the Dodgers organization. There's probably, from an insider convo with someone who works in the game, there's about 10 to 15 names on these lists of people they're talking to and talking about. It's not a simple process. It's not as simple as, hey, here's 3 names. Oh, no. Okay, let's get 3 more names. It doesn't work that way. I keep going back to the fact that Steve Cohen did not become a billionaire overnight. It wasn't accidental. He does his homework. He outworks people. That's how he's been so successful.
Right.
You look at the guy that the character they built after him, Bobby Axelrod in Billions. One of the things that character did was he would, all hours of the night, he had people working around the clock for him, trying to figure out what are these advantages. It's the same thing with Steve Cohen. That's what it's based off of. So anyone who buys into what the media is selling is silly. Don't let them color your thought process about the Mets and about Steve Cohen. Think for yourself. Realize that if Steve Cohen's a billionaire, there's a reason for it, and that he's going to make a good choice. You might not agree with it, and that's our prerogative as fans. We don't have to agree with who he brings in, but remember, they also know a lot more about these people than we do. I do want to say one thing about Zach Scott. I want to try to bring back the low points. Here's a guy who had a single DUI. By all accounts, he was a great guy. The Red Sox loved him. Organizations have loved him. He did a really good job at looking around the edges for talent. He brought in Pilar and Villar and a lot of other people. He was thrown into a tough situation when his buddy Jared Porter was let go. And he pulled over on the side of the road. I'm not excusing DUIs. I never would. Pulled over on the side of the road, went to sleep. You have a guy like Tony La Russa, who has been arrested multiple times for DUI back in the game. He was let go apparently a number of times by police in Chicago and St. Louis because of who he was, and they escorted him home, and plenty of times driving drunk. And here's a guy who because the circumstances were so bad in that organization, the optics were so bad for the past year, he makes a mistake. Didn't kill anyone, thank God. Didn't hurt anyone, thank God. Does he deserve to be out of a game? I don't think so. It's my own personal thought. I hope in a world where people are forgiven for a lot worse things, that this guy is not going to be kicked out of a game when he does a really good job at what he does. He's liked within the game. He, in my opinion, deserves a second chance. And this is not a Jared Porter or Mickey Callaway where he literally harassed people to the point where they didn't want to do their job. Just my quick soapbox stand. No one has to agree with me. It's just my thought. And I really like the guy. I know someone who had worked with him for quite a while in Boston, thinks the world of him as a human being and as a baseball guy. So it would be nice to find a way to forgive a guy like this who his whole life has been baseball. He made a mistake. There's no doubt about it, right? And maybe it's more embarrassment because it happened at Steve Cohen's house. Maybe he's being held to a higher standard because of all the things that happened with the other people that Sandy didn't vet all that well. Who knows? At the end of the day, he's a baseball guy and he deserves, in my opinion, another shot.
I agree with you wholeheartedly. I think he was doing the right things during the course of the year. It's unfortunate, but that it's out of my hands now. So whatever they decide as an organization, I'm going to have to accept. But I agree with you. I think he was a good baseball man, just a victim of circumstances, being at the wrong place, the wrong time, and it just wasn't the right time with the team starting to fall apart too when it happened too. So snowball of things.
Right. And you want a guy like that in play, right? Because look at a guy like Chris Taylor. Chris Taylor doing so well for the Dodgers, right? He was a guy around the fringes, just like Kike Hernandez was. By the way, last year in with Max Met, the blog that I've written for a lot of years, I did a 3-part series about who I thought the Mets should bring into the front office, what they needed to do in moving their talent development forward, some of the players they should have brought in. I was a big proponent of bringing Kike because of his versatility. Chris Taylor's that kind of guy. He's going to be a free agent. Put him in center field, put him in shortstop, put him in first base. He'll play it equally well for you. He's a gamer, tough kid. He's not going to cost you $20 million a year. Guys like that, the Jared Porters and the Zach Scotts and the guys like that, the Tampa guys, they've been finding guys like this for a long period of time. You need somebody like that. And the reason why Chris Taylor keeps coming back. Company I work for, 401 Sports, it's a company that puts out virtual shares of players, athletes in those sports. Chris Taylor was issued on Monday as an IPO for $1. It was holding about $1.10, and he had 3 home runs last night. And right away, it jumped to double to $2 a share this morning. First thing as trading was open, and I look at it. We as fans we react to what we see, right? So you see Chris Taylor. On our platform, his value went up, and now in the offseason, his value is going to go up too because
you never know.
Right? Maybe he was a $7 million a year ball player before this series. Now maybe he's a $12 million a year.
He's a Randy Rosarina of 2021.
Right, possibly. He's been having a great series. That's another guy that talk about a guy we put Rosarina out there for like $2, I think. And his shares up to like $9. So the people that bought in early are like, I'm not trying to throw my business in here, but
no, and I actually want you to because I'm familiar with it from Joey's Utopian Bay. You're on there almost every Tuesday now.
Yeah.
So if you can, it's your forum. This is all about David J. Rubin today. This is your lucky day.
I'm sorry,
October 23rd, David J. Rubin Day on this podcast. Nice. And I'm hoping there'll be more David J. Rubin days on this podcast too. So
we'd love it. We'd love it.
Well,
I love what you, I have to say, I have to throw your plug. I love what you do on this site. I love what you do on Baseball is a Life. Here's the thing. We root for different teams. In this case, we're rooting for the Mets, but we root for different teams, but we root for baseball, right?
Right.
I hate the idea of the Astros against the Braves in this World Series, 2 teams I don't like at all. Will I still watch it? Yeah. I respect Dusty Baker a ton. I respect Alex Anthopoulos and what the Braves team has done. I hate that they've done it to the Mets, but I respect the heck out of them because they replaced the superstar midseason and did a great job of it. The Astros came back from a huge cheating scandal. Are they cheating still? I don't know. I couldn't tell you. Will there always be a cloud over them? Yeah. But Dusty Baker's a great baseball guy and a great dude, a great human being. I love the fact that he's winning with yet another team, right? So it's exciting as a baseball fan. For me, what's really cool, I'm a fan of all sports. I'm a fan of hockey, football,
So am I.
soccer, tennis, everything. So it's really cool. I'm part of a company called 41 Sports, which I alluded to. What we do is we issue virtual shares of stock of athletes from every sport. So, for instance, from the Mets, we had two. Jeff McNeil didn't do so well like his season,
Well, can
but
I
he has a
impart something about Jeff McNeil before you go
uh-huh,
on? I think he
uh-huh.
was hurt this year. There's no way you
He
you
was
you
hurt.
lose it. Yeah, he just
Yeah, he
won't
was hurt.
admit it
Yeah,
because there's no way you deteriorate like that after being one of the best hitters in baseball for 4 seasons. So
right.
I just don't see him all of a sudden declining like that. I think he will be back next year. What the Mets have in store for him, I'm not sure, but I think it was injury related this year. But who am I?
Definitely. Well, he did. I mean, there were some small injuries that we know of, like to his hands. When you're not he would hit for power by accident, right? His mistakes will go over the wall. He's a line drive hitter. He's the kind of guy that if his hands are hurt, he uses a weird type of bat, right? He hits to opposite fields. If his hands are even a little bit hurting, you're taking his game away from him. So he's not able to drive the ball correctly. He had different hitting coaches, which was a mistake. We'll get into that maybe another time. He had different hitting coaches. He was coming off of a pandemic year. There were a lot of things that were put in play this year, injuries, a lot of different things, philosophies, etc., that a lot of players suffered from. He's a perfect example, Jeff McNeil, of a guy who could have a huge bounce back next year. I hope it's with us. I really hope they don't give up on him. Brody wanted to trade him once. Sandy wanted to trade him once. I don't think they ever realized what they had in McNeil. I hope this year with his play declining, they're not going to give up on him. But his IPO was issued. It hasn't gone up a lot, but it's one of those things that, like, I believe in him. So if I were allowed to buy, I would have bought heavy on Jeff McNeil as a long-term portfolio piece for me. Pete Alonso was issued at $3 not long after the All-Star break. His stock is worth like $6, so his price doubled. So if you bought 1,000 shares of Pete Alonso at $3, it's now worth $6. So you're guaranteed to, at whatever his book value is, you're always guaranteed to be able to sell him at that. But in the marketplace, while a player is playing, your shares are going to trade at whatever the market dictates, like in the regular stock market. He just sold, I think, a couple hundred shares of his just sold for like $6 and change. So someone who bought him at $3 doubled their money. Every day we issue IPOs at 10 o'clock Pacific. 9 o'clock Pacific, 12 noon Eastern. Today, the shares have already sold out. We're talking, so I didn't even get to see how quick they went, but they went real quick. Some baseball players. Kike Hernandez was one, Red Sox, and Rafael Devers, the other, two Red Sox.
He's
Every
been red
day,
hot this postseason.
he's been red hot,
too.
yeah. And I have some say in who gets IPO. That's one of the things that I do. And we've got some incredible players, Luka Doncic, Dak Prescott,
Dak
Chris
Prescott
Taylor,
coming into
Dak
his own.
Prescott.
Yeah.
Yeah, coming into his own. Joe Burrows, great Bengals quarterback. My favorite quarterback in football, Justin Herbert, came out last week and his shares almost doubled.
Well, I said San Diego is going to be a franchise team, one of the top franchise teams for the next 10 years because of him and their philosophy.
Agreed.
They're
He's
going
a
to build
Dan
that whole
Fouts.
team around him.
Right.
Yeah.
He's a Dan Fouts, but on a better team.
Right.
Right. Yeah. So it's a lot of fun because for me, I used to play fantasy. I don't bet. I'm not a gambler, and this is not betting. Right. I hate the idea that someone could put $1,000 on a game and lose all $1,000. I could never do that. Right. I lived in Vegas for a year and I spent $200 the whole year, and it was on Wheel of Fortune slots. Right.
You're a better man than me. That's why I don't live in Vegas.
Yeah, I can't do it. My dad was a poker player, was incredible at it, and he said, "I don't have a poker face. Don't do that." He said, "Don't lose your money in the slots. Invest it." So I did. So for me, this is exciting because for a lot of years I was playing fantasy baseball. I played with the same group of guys for like 4 years in a row. I won it 3 out of 4 years. In year 5,
Nice.
they didn't want me to play anymore because there was a keepers league and I knew who all the minor league players were. And I was, so they said, "Hey, can you sit out a year?" I'm like, "Yeah," they wanted it. Okay. So when this came, someone that I used to work with, who I know, who's an incredible person, would put this together. He created previously on one of the first fantasy games himself. It's a great team of people. And he said, "Hey, I want to bring you on board. I know your baseball knowledge and everything else. I handle human resources and other things that I did in the restaurant business for years. But I have a lot of knowledge about young players and sports and follow that part. So we have a team that helps decide who the IPOs are going to be. There are some quants and some real mathematical experts, but a lot of it is good old sports fans who understand the game, each one of the games, right? So we put out every day some great IPOs. And for me, what's exciting is a guy like Mike Trout. Like next week, we're doing something called GOAT Week. So we're putting out Tom Brady, Mike Trout, Mookie Betts, KD. I love Kevin Durant, the Greek Freak. So putting out 6 of actually the greatest players in the game, and all of them have substantial value. Tom Brady, for instance, is going to go out for $150. His stock is already worth 166. When he retires, he gets a huge bump for making the Hall of Fame. At some point, Tom Brady will be worth about anywhere from $225 to $250 a share, and we're offering him next week. And if you were going to make a portfolio, he would be your Amazon, right? He would be that, right. So we do a lot of unheard of players who are starting. Ron DeFranco, we put him out right before the big push happened with him. Next year we're going to have a lot of first year guys who are just going to try to make their mark as well as superstars. And Juan Soto's on there still, $16 a share trading right now, which to me is a huge bargain. There's all kinds of great stuff going on, and the cool thing is you hold on to, instead of an NFT, which is a photo that disappears in the ether, you're actually investing in a player that you believe in. So 401 sports comes from, yes, the 401k idea. We put money in our portfolios, stocks that we don't know much about, that there's not a lot of transparency to. This has total transparency. You are investing virtually in a player that you believe in. And if they hit the Hall of Fame, you hit the jackpot in that stock. If they don't, your stock is still worth something. So it's a great investment. It's a lot of fun. And there's things to follow that are game by game achievements. There are season achievements and career achievements. So Mike Trout's going to be up next week for sale. You already know Mike Trout's going to be Hall of Famer. That adds $50 to his value when he retires. He's probably got 9 years, 10 years left, God willing. I'd love to be able to see him 9 or 10 more years. Then 5 years after he retires, he's a Hall of Famer. Once he retires, a little button pops out, says cash out. Whatever his accumulated actual value is based on the rules of the game is yours. The money that you put in is held in an escrow account, so it's not touched. So the money will be there at the time when you want to cash out. So it's an incredible, fun thing that people are picking up all over the country. We're in, I think, 25 states right now. Eventually we'll be in every state and we'll be international. To me, it's great because as a sports fan, I get to see every day kind of what the trends are in these players that we follow.
What people are feeling, right?
What people are feeling. And you want to see that pulse, right? You and I and everyone in their audience lives in a world where journalists kind of dictate what the pulse is. They kind of tell us what to think, We're fans. We have an intelligence. Some people are more knowledgeable about stats. Some people are more knowledgeable about this, or whatever it might be. But we all love what we love and who we love. And we're all correct, right? Your opinion is 100% right for Stan Phillips, just like my opinion is 100% right for David.
Well, I used to think that way.
Well, but it is.
But now that I have now that I know people all over the country from like different teams, I see things from a different. I'm not that narrow-minded but I agree with you on that. You can be a little bit strong-willed when it comes to your own opinion. That's right. Without a doubt. And sometimes you stick with your gut and you come out a winner.
Right. And I'm not saying not to listen to pundits. Of course you listen to pundits. Of course you listen to people that know what they're doing and who are experts in their field. Of course you want to take what these people are telling you and put it in your brain and utilize it, whether you're playing an online game, whether you're investing in something, or whether you're just a fan wanting to know who to root for, right? Their information, their feedback is important. But ultimately, it's you who decide who you're going to root for. Ultimately, it's you who make the decisions about what you want to do. And ultimately, like with anything else, you're going to be the person on the spot. If your team loses, some people might think you're an idiot. But you and I know that as Met fans, we're not idiots rooting for the Mets. We're just wrong more than we're right, and you get used to that
Right.
after all these years, you know. So,
Yeah, and you're
so
in control of your own destiny too, and it gives you
right,
the power to decide your destiny.
right,
So it's a good
my
one-on-one involvement with your players and who you pick and everything. So
right.
if I wanted to find out more about this and I actually wanted to get involved, where would I go?
So thanks for asking. So you would go to 401sports.com, but here's the thing. What I want to do, same thing like I did with Utopian. Stan, I'm going to send you a link after we're
Hmm.
done. I'm going to ask you to post it. Anyone who goes through this link, it'll be a direct referral from me. It means that you will get bonus funds added to your account when you sign up.
Okay.
So for every dollar you put in, you get 25% back to utilize for new IPO purchases. So today, Kike Hernandez went on for I forgot how much it was. I think it might have been $5. So if you put $100 in to invest in IPOs, you would get 25% of that back to invest in future IPOs. It's not used in the marketplace because that's a different type of that's full funds. But you could buy IPOs with these matching funds, and we did it when we started the platform. That is kind of ended, but for listeners of this show, for people who are in this site the way I am, the way you are, and all of our loyal Met fans want to try to give something back as a thank you. There will be Mets coming on board. Jacob deGrom will be IPO'd within the next year. Um, uh, Pete Alonso's still there. Jeff McNeil's still there. I'm sure Lindor will be up. There'll be other guys being offered. I'm sure if the Mets re-sign Baez, I'm hoping, forget the thumbs down for a minute, think about him as a ball player. If we do re-sign him, I'm sure that within a very short order, he'll be offered up as an IPO. So there'll be a lot of great Mets up there. More importantly, there's a lot of great athletes up there. And real important to me, we're big supporters of WNBA. We're going to be working with them in the future. We're going to be putting up some WNBA athletes, tennis, golf. It's important that we don't. Baseball to me is the be all end all. But I'm a huge hockey fan. I'm a huge football fan. I'm a huge hoops fan, and I love sports in general. I'll watch anything. I'll watch bowling if that's the only thing on. I'll watch archery if I have to, as long as I'm not the target. So and the nice thing is we're going to at some point we'll have all sports represented here at 401 Sports.
Well, that's fantastic. I'll be sure to spread the word on the site.
Thanks, bud.
You know what's funny, and this is for the folks out there watching, listening, whatever you may be doing. Before we started this, I said to David, we'll keep this to like a half an hour. I got a few topics. We probably won't get to any of them. All of them, I should say. Well, we didn't even really get to half of them, and it's an hour gone by. So I knew my worst fears, which were good fears, that we could talk forever. And I'm asking David here, I'm putting him on the spot. Do you want to be a regular guest on this show, maybe once a week or so?
I would love to. I'd love to, Stan. I'm
all right,
totally thrilled.
Oh, you're great. You're great. And your knowledge of the Mets, honestly, I knew you loved the Mets, but after today, so, oh my God, this guy could take me out and wipe the floors with me with his Met knowledge and enthusiasm. So
I don't
it's
know
good.
about the knowledge. You're pretty up there, my friend.
It's called Google sometimes, my friend. But no, I really did enjoy this, and I don't want to keep the folks on. We're on for an hour, so I definitely want to give people a taste of what may be coming up in the future. And again, I really want to thank you for coming on. You've been a great guest.
My pleasure.
I can see many, 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 many more great Met conversations ahead between the two of us. Definitely. And like I said, it's 401sports.com. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm. But
okay.
Before you go there, again, don't go directly there yet, Stan. Have them go through the link that you'll post.
Okay, definitely.
I really, it's important to me to give back, and when they're doing this, I want them to get something.
Okay.
It's my fellow Met fans, especially.
Yeah.
We all deserve, God knows, after the year we've had, we all deserve something. So, yeah.
Yeah, I give a link to the podcast, which we're recording right now, and also the YouTube cast. So it'll be great. And the even better news for me is David was willing to enjoy, and I really did enjoy this. He'll be willing to come on again. And David, before when I end this broadcast, just stay on for a second.
Sure.
And again, I want to thank everyone for watching and listening. And this was very entertaining for me. For once, you didn't have to listen to me for a half hour plus ramble on and on.
Oh, I like listening to you, man.
You're the guy. Anyway, again, thanks everybody, and we'll be talking. The good news is David will be back on soon, and have a great day. Enjoy the playoffs. I will. Oh yeah. Oh man, this guy wins my heart over. I swear to God. But anyway, Enjoy the playoffs, and we'll be back tomorrow with talking Mets and a little bit of playoffs tomorrow. So enjoy the day, enjoy the baseball, and we'll talk again tomorrow. Take care,
Let's
everyone.
go Dodgers.
That's you want to hear my perverted reasoning for rooting for the Dodgers? I don't know if it's because you live out there. This is how sick I am as a Met fan. I look upon it as the lineage of the Mets.
Yes.
If it wasn't for the Giants and the Dodgers, there would be no Mets.
Right.
And City Field is a cookie cutter of Ebbets Field. So
Yes.
the Dodgers take precedence over the Giants for me. So I always do root for the Giants. How can you root? They deserted it. I said, no, it's not about the Dodgers themselves. It's about the Met history. That we're the baby child of the Dodgers and Giants leaving.
Right.
So.
Right. Giants, we played in their polo grounds. My dad was a dyed-in-the-wool Giants fan living in Brooklyn. Quick ending story. My dad was a big guy. He was a teacher. He was a former football player. Not the kind of guy to do acrobatics. In 1951, when the Giants win the pennant, and I know this is true because my godfather told it to me. They were in a bar watching the game. It wasn't readily available everywhere, and they won. And he was in the middle of Brooklyn, and my dad yelled and screamed, did a cartwheel in the middle of this bar. He had never done a cartwheel before in his life or after. And if you knew my dad, you would know what that meant. Big barrel-chested guy, and then he started running out the door, being chased by Brooklyn Dodger fans down the streets of Brooklyn. So yeah, I have a thing for both the Giants and the Dodgers. Love them both. I love the lineage. It's you put it in a great way. We are the baby of their departure.
And their history is on the hat you're wearing is part Dodger, part Giant. The jersey with the script, the Mets is the Dodgers.
Yep.
So it lives on forever. And like
does.
you, I root for the Dodgers. And I was rooting for the Dodgers against the Giants, like I said, because of the Ebbets Field factor with City Field. I'm a little strange. I need psychiatric help, but I would like to see the Dodgers win it all. But
Me too.
Okay. Well, that's good news. That's a good way to part. Nice. And like I said, I hope to talk real soon with you.
Yes.
And again, folks, have a great weekend. David, stay on for a second.
You got it. Thanks, guys.